Surprisingly, the Spiel des Jahres nominees are not the top story this week. Let's find out what beat them in this week's news roundup for May 24th, 2023. Currently, the board game community is set ablaze not by a new game, but rather a controversy between the board game company Into the Unknown and YouTube channel Quackalope. Now, odds are you've probably already heard of this if you follow any other board game social media or major sites. But for those who don't know too much, I'm going to do my best to do a quick summary, but due to the nature of this, it's going to be the kind of thing where you may want to find out and read more about it. But there is a lot going on, and it all started earlier this weekend. You see, Into the Unknown was running a Kickstarter for new expansions and a reprint for Aeon's Trespass Odyssey. And many reviewers have released review videos, including Quackalope, who released multiple videos, one being very positive and one being very negative. Now, this caused a lot of kerfuffle and discussion on the Kickstarter comment section, which did lead to Into the Unknown leaving a comment saying something along the lines of, well, it's odd that one of the reviewers asked us for $7,500 in order to reshoot a review they made that was negative but could be made better. Now, this was quite the accusation, and it didn't technically name anyone in that comment, but it felt like one of those backhanded or passive-aggressive comments where it doesn't technically name someone, but you could sort of guess who they're trying to refer to. And like I said, big accusation. So people asked, hold on, you can't just say something like that. You're going to need some evidence. And Into the Unknown did so and actually provided an email chain between them and Quackalope, which actually now brings us all the way earlier into the start of the year in January. The first email was from Quackalope sent to Into the Unknown. It was sent mid-January and asked about doing a sponsorship deal with them. They had already worked with them before and had gotten their own copy of Aeon's Trespass Odyssey and was thinking about doing a group of videos, 5 videos for $7,500, apparently a discount compared to the $12,500 usually charged. Now, it seems Into the Unknown wasn't so sure about this, as well as busy with other things, so they didn't respond until February 3rd, saying that they may be interested in one video and if they could ask some follow-up questions. Now, Quackalope responded that they had actually already put in 50 hours into the game, as well as inviting a patron to play with them, and they already recorded stuff and honestly had a pretty bad experience. Now, they said they would be willing to reshoot it if they sent someone over to make sure things worked out well, and of course, agreed to the previous sponsorship. Now, Into the Unknown seems like they still wanted to work with Quackalope, but they said like they don't have the money to send someone overseas, as it seems that they're in different continents. And maybe if they could send over some raw footage that they could find out what went wrong, or even edited footage, and find out what was going on. But it seems that they really went back and forth, not really moving too much. Quackalope wanting to move on with the sponsorship agreement, with Into the Unknown really wanted to do one video maybe, as well as some things about not comparing it to other games, as well as maybe trying to make it more positive. In the end, it seems Into the Unknown decided to cut ties there and pretty much said, good luck, we hope we can work again, and then moved forward. Now that leads us into this last weekend where all this occurred, and now brings us to the point when everyone asking about this accusation gets to see the email chain, which has made a lot of people pretty angry. Usually when we hear things like this, I feel it's not as quick to see evidence, but this email chain is pretty damning. A lot of people have been pretty angry, saying Quackalope was doing the equivalent of blackmail or extortion, while some others said that maybe the emails were just written poorly and it wasn't designed to be a threat. Now, only recently has Quackalope put up a video responding to this. It is by Jesse, who apparently is in Israel, which is why he's not responding as often as one would expect in a situation like this. The video is about 30 minutes long, but basically, very sorry, didn't mean to lose people's trust, has no ill will towards Into the Unknown, and it wasn't meant to come off as blackmail or a threat. They do say that they plan to make changes at Quackalope. The only one that they really mentioned in the video is that they would no longer be the ones initiating what kind of sponsorship or games when they deal with other companies. Now, we don't know what else they plan to do, but they will still do sponsored video content, and they plan to have more changes they're going to talk about in a later video, as well as a live stream sometime in June. Now, you can watch the video yourself, just like you can go read the emails in order to get a more detailed understanding, as I think part of this comes down to the exact wording and what's going on, which may help you decide how you feel about this. Regardless, though, this is definitely something that has a lot of people riled up. And understandably so. I think it's multifactored. There is, of course, just the money value. I think $7,500 is not a small amount. But there is also the fact that it seems they would be willing to accept money in exchange for changing a review from something negative to maybe a bit more positive. And this has brought into question not just Quackalope, but I think content creators in general, and what are the rules, what makes sense, what's fair, because they are trying to make a living, but when is something paid fair and when is not? Is getting a game for free already making a review too biased? Now, this is the time I think I should mention what happens here on Roll for Crit. I do paid content. 90% of it are the preview videos that are just prototypes for crowdfunding projects. And for the most part, it's me just showing how the game is played and some of the mechanics rather than giving like the crits and misses there and what's good and bad. Then there are some other things, but those are mainly just to have a playthrough, some how to plays, and a couple unboxings. When it comes to either the reviews, both regular and expansion, as well as these news videos, they have no monetary compensation. Some of them I have received games for, but if you want to know if I did receive a game for review or if it is paid for the previews, all of that is written in the description, so you can make sure you find out if that is something you care about. I can go into more detail in a separate video, but I think that's enough for this news video. Now, in terms of my thoughts on this, it's a little bit hard because I feel that whenever anything comes up with other YouTubers, especially in the board gaming space, for me to talk about it feels more like mudslinging rather than actually, important news. That said, in this situation, I do think there's a reason why I'm putting in the news roundup is because it's been everywhere and it's causing a lot of conversation about where content creators are supposed to fit in the world of board gaming. In this case, while I can understand someone getting some rules wrong, as well as, of course, saying like, hey, if you can help us, that way we'll reshoot. But the wording of the email didn't say, I believe I didn't play the game right. Can you help me make sure? And if I did play it significantly wrong, I'll reshoot it. It was, at least it really looks like there was a price tag attached to that. And that obviously really, I think, is pretty hard to argue against. Yes, you did put in a lot of hours, but there are plenty of times that people put in a lot of hours that are wasted because of mistakes. You can't expect to be paid for those hours unless, of course, there actually was something wrong with the game. Now, I haven't played it yet. I actually do own it, but it is a campaign game, so it's one of those things where I really need to set up and get a group ready rather than just open it and play it as soon as possible. But, of course, there are a lot of different things going on, and what I expect to happen more is I don't know what's going to happen with Quackalope. I actually probably think they'll still be fine. They may lose a bit of subscribers, but I think they're big enough that they will keep moving forward. But I think what's more interesting is that we're going to see some changes with content creators as well as in the community, industry, and board game companies. We may see more about how companies are more open and try to explain what they do with video content creators, or maybe we don't hear about that per se, but I'm going to see more of that in terms of how content creators and companies have different relationships. It's definitely a story that I think isn't going to end here. I'm sure I'm going to talk more about that, and not just because we still have to wait for those videos from Quackalope later on in June. We'll see how this goes. You can leave your thoughts on this below, whether it's about this story or even, like I said, if you want a video explaining of more of how I do the videos and how I decide what works or doesn't work. I'll do my best to respond to them. Do keep in mind, though, mostly when it comes to talking about other content creators and other commenters, that this is a very charged topic. So if you could try to just come from a place of understanding and remember there is someone on the other side of that screen. Now onto the story I thought was going to be the big one for this week. The nominees for the Spiel des Jahres have been announced. It was over a live stream on Monday. They not only announced the nominees as well as some other runner-up games that almost made it, and a special award that was given to Unlock. So congratulations to those there. But let's go over the nominees and see what games have a chance to join this year's Spiel des Jahres. So starting off with the Kinderspiel, the one for kids, we've got Carla Caramel, Gigamon, and Mysterium Kids Captain Echo's Treasure. Now, usually I don't have a lot of experience with the nominees for the Kinderspiel. That said, the Mysterium Kids is the younger version of Mysterium, a game that I truly love. So hopefully, if it's as fun as Mysterium, that would be the one I'm leaning more towards. That said, the other two actually look very interesting, and I am curious how they play. Then let's jump to the other side with the Kennerspiel, the one for more advanced gamers. We've got Challengers, which is a capture the flag game with lots of crazy groups from dinosaurs to ducks to wizards. We've got Iki, which is a Japanese marketplace game that is actually the newer version. I actually have the old one. And then there's Planet Unknown, a game I've seen nominated or winning awards quite a bit over this last year. Finally, we got the main one, the big one, the Spiel des Jahres. Though it is technically aimed at family gamers, it, at least earlier on, I felt like was the game award. It could also be that the other two didn't exist yet. But for this year, we've got Dorf Romantic, the board game, Fun Facts, and Next Station London. I do believe that Dorf Romantic isn't actually out yet in the States. The other two, Fun Fact, I'm curious how it will work and how it will compare to other trivia games that make it stand out. And interesting enough, Next Station London, I just played that over the last weekend. So I can play it a bit more. And I will say very least, I can see why it's gotten here. I do need to play more, especially the solo mode. But it's definitely got some interesting twists. And hopefully I'll have a review out for you soon. So I am trying to get my hands on the Kenner and Spiel nominees, as those are ones I feel like I can fairly talk about. The Kinderspiel, I always feel like if I was going to do a review for a game like that, I'd really want to, play it with kids and see how they felt in addition to my own feelings, because odds are you're buying it as a parent, and what's the point even if you're having fun if they're not enjoying it. As for the other ones, I'm unable to get my hands on Dorf Romantic. As I said earlier, I don't think it's out yet. As well as Planet Unknown seems to be just, I don't want to say out of print, just it was a Kickstarter, so it's hard to get your hands on. Though I did read that a new expansion should be coming, and hopefully that project will have a reprint of the base game as well. Regardless, I've heard a lot about that one, so it does seem that one probably has a very good chance. But hopefully I'll be able to play the other ones and give reviews so you can see my thoughts on those. If you played any of these games, please let me know in the comments. And if you think one of them is a sure winner, feel free to let me know. Now we need to talk about Steamforge games. Recently, they made a deal with Kickstarter stating that their next 4 games are guaranteed to appear on Kickstarter. And the first one is already there with Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now, this is very interesting because I think most of them are already on Kickstarter, but also the Iceborne game just came literally on the heels of the regular Monster Hunter World. I just got my copy a little while ago and haven't had the chance to play it yet, or at the very least, not nearly enough to think that I would want to invest again in an expansion, which is very interesting. But I do feel that this deal is less from Steamforge's part and rather Kickstarter's, as they're seeing more competition from GameFound as well as BackerKit, and I feel they want to try and make sure they guarantee they have some major names on their side, and with Steamforge making games of some extremely popular IPs, it makes sense that they would go to them. This is all on the heels, though, of Steamforge firing 20 employees. I believe they actually hired 20 employees last year, I read, but I don't know if those are the same 20. Supposedly, this is for redundancies, though according to the employees, that this wasn't handled very well. Apparently, they literally heard that they may be fired because of redundancies, and then literally within minutes or hours, they lost all access and were forced out. And there's a lot going on here that's really terrible that they've been talking about. Though I think the big one I've seen most people talk about is the idea of using Kickstarter to fund previous ones. This is a style that we've heard and made a lot of people worried, as it tends to end up with bankruptcy. We've already heard a lot of companies going bankrupt or having to make major changes. And one of the major commonalities between all these companies is that they were really focused on using crowdfunding for their game production. And Steamforge is no different. That said, I'd say at least compared to a lot of the other ones, Steamforge does have some major properties, so that helps a lot. Monster Hunter, Elden Ring. That said, we saw another big property, Siege 6, with Mythic Games, and they had quite some problems as well. So maybe having that big license isn't the guarantee that I think it is. And people are still pretty mad about that Dark Souls RPG, I believe that came out a little while back. Hopefully, I won't be returning to a news roundup this year telling you about another company going bankrupt. That all said, we'll see how this goes. Not just how the company is. Iceborne, I already know, is doing pretty well. And I will actually play my Monster Hunter copy and see whether it's actually a fun game or whether I should just stick to the video game. Star Wars Unlimited released an update talking a little bit more about the game. We don't know the official rules, but we are able to glean some interesting facts. First, you will actually have 2 deployment zones, ground and space, meaning that not only are you going to be playing ground forces, but you're also going to be worrying about spaceships, and I'm sure you're going to have some anti-air, but I guess anti-space guns on the ground you can place, as well as, of course, bombardment from the air, though there could be strategies of going all in on one side or the other. It also seems that you're going to have leaders. I don't know if this is going to be similar to Commander in Magic, where they're already out in the field and ready to go, but they seem to be much stronger and need to meet certain conditions before they can enter the battle. Finally, they talked a bit more about the pro scene. It seems that they're going to have 2 styles. They call it casual and competitive. Casual is the usual card games, your pre-releases, your whatever night Star Wars will be, that kind of gameplay. But they're going to have a more competitive thing where you will actually earn tournament points, get enough of these points, and you'll be allowed to enter the Galactic Championship, which is, I believe, the equivalent of their World Cup. This all does sound very interesting. Or, of course, you can read the cards and try to guess more on what certain abilities and what's going on there. But it looks like a good start so far, and I'm definitely curious to learn more. Sticking on card games, but not nearly as positive, a while back I talked about a TCG Union being successfully formed. It seems up to this time they have yet to begin negotiations. According to the union's Twitter, it would seem TCG Player has been dragging their feet in ways of stonewalling the union or trying to reverse the decision of approval, pretty much doing a lot of other stuff before actually even going to the table. Now, if you want to support the union, there is a letter that you can sign asking for TCG Player to actually come to the table and begin negotiations so we can actually find out what both sides want and what both sides can do in order to make it a better working environment. Finally, for those who are fans of PAX Unplugged, we now know the dates for this year. PAX Unplugged will be held from December 1st to the 3rd, so make sure you keep that window open, and I will be there, so feel free to stop by and say hi. That, however, I believe is where I'm going to end it today. There is some really big stories, some really fun. I love to hear everyone's thoughts on the Spiel, the Jahres nominees, but also, big controversy when it comes to board game content creation. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Please let me know in the comments down below. And obviously, I'll do my best to keep you up to date. But for now, that is all we have for this week. Thank you so much for watching to this point, and hopefully I'll see you in next week's News Roundup.